You ever had that moment where you're sitting across from someone you love and something just doesn't feel right? Not a big dramatic betrayal, no yelling, no door slamming, just something small, a joke at your expense, a dismissive look, that gut feeling that whispers, this isn't how love is supposed to feel. I talk a lot about vulnerability and connection, but let's get real. Respect is the foundation of any healthy relationship. Without it, love isn't love, it's performance, obligation, maybe even fear. And the tricky thing, disrespect doesn't always come wrapped in obvious cruelty. Sometimes it's subtle. It hides in the everyday moments we brush off as not a big deal. But over time, those moments shape our worth in that relationship. And when respect erodes, so does everything else. So today we're going to talk about 9 signs your partner doesn't truly respect you. Not to create fear, but to create clarity. Because when we name something, we take away its power. And when we see the truth, we can do something about it. First, they dismiss your feelings. Ever shared something that hurt you only to hear you're overreacting or you're too sensitive? That's not feedback. That's gaslighting. Respect means holding space for each other's emotions, even when they don't make sense to us. If someone constantly minimizes what you feel, what they're really saying is, your experience doesn't matter to me. And here's the thing, when someone you care about tells you that your feelings are too much, it's easy to start believing it. You start second guessing yourself. Maybe I'm being dramatic. Maybe I should just let this go. But emotions don't just disappear because someone else refuses to acknowledge them. They sit there, unheard, unresolved, until one day they spill out in ways that surprise even you. When someone respects you, they don't have to agree with everything you feel, but they do have to acknowledge it. There's a difference between, I don't fully understand why this hurts you, but I'm here to listen, and this shouldn't bother you. One builds trust, the other chips away at it. And trust is everything. Without it, even the smallest disagreements start to feel unsafe. What makes this so hard is that a lot of us were raised to downplay our feelings. We were taught that being emotional is a weakness. So when a partner dismisses us, it can trigger old stories that say, I'm too much, or worse, I'm unlovable when I'm messy. But here's what I know for sure. Your emotions are not a burden. They are signals. They tell you when something isn't right. And when those signals are constantly ignored, it's not just disrespect, it's emotional isolation. In a healthy relationship, both people feel seen and heard, even when the conversation is uncomfortable. If your feelings are always being pushed aside, the problem isn't your emotions, the problem is the lack of space being made for them. And you deserve to be in a relationship where your inner world isn't treated as an inconvenience. Second, they don't listen. They wait to talk. We've all had conversations where we realize the other person isn't really listening. They're just waiting for their turn to speak. True respect means being present. It's hearing not just the words, but the emotions behind them. If your partner constantly interrupts, dismisses, or talks over you, they are prioritizing their voice over yours. And let's be honest, there's a world of difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is passive, it's background noise. Listening is active. It says, I care enough to put my own thoughts aside and make space for yours. When a partner isn't willing to do that, it's not just frustrating, it's lonely. Because there's nothing more isolating than being physically next to someone who refuses to truly hear you. What's tricky is that poor listening doesn't always look obvious. Sometimes it's disguised as offering solutions. You share something vulnerable, and instead of sitting with you in that moment, they jump to fix it. Here's what you should do, or worse, it's not that big of a deal, just let it go. And while that might come from a place of wanting to help, it can feel like your emotions are an obstacle to be solved, not a reality to be honored. And here's the truth. When someone consistently fails to listen, it's not just a communication problem, it's a value problem. Because when we value someone, we value their voice. We understand that their experiences deserve space, even if they challenge us, even if they're inconvenient. Real connection isn't about speed. It's about slowing down enough to say, I see you, I hear you, and what matters to you matters to me. When someone talks over you or listens just long enough to respond, What they're really saying is, my perspective is more important than yours. And over time, that message doesn't just damage trust, it erodes your sense of worth within the relationship. Because if your words don't matter, how long before you start believing that you don't matter? Respect in a relationship isn't about agreeing with everything your partner says. It's about being curious enough to listen, to really listen, even when you don't understand or when you don't have an easy fix. Because when both people feel heard, that's when real intimacy grows. And when they don't, that's when the distance starts to creep in. Third, they make jokes at your expense. Humor should bring people closer, not tear them down. If your partner constantly makes fun of you, especially about things you've expressed insecurity about, it's not just a joke. It's a power move. And love isn't a game where one person wins at the other's expense. The thing about humor is that it can be both a bridge and a weapon. In healthy relationships, laughter connects us. It softens the edges of hard days and reminds us that we're in this together. But when humor becomes a way to undermine or belittle, it stops being playful and starts being harmful. And it's easy to excuse. It's easy to say, I didn't mean it, or can't you take a joke? But here's the truth. When someone laughs at you, not with you, it doesn't just hurt. It chips away at your sense of emotional safety. And the most painful part, it usually targets the most vulnerable pieces of who you are, the things you've shared in confidence, the parts of yourself that already feel tender, suddenly become fair game. And when the person who's supposed to love you uses those parts for a punchline, it doesn't feel like love. It feels like betrayal. Because sharing your insecurities with someone is an act of trust. It's saying, here's the part of me I usually protect. Can you hold it gently? And when that trust is broken, even through a joke, it creates a ripple effect. You start guarding yourself. You share less. You laugh less freely. And over time, you stop showing up as your full, authentic self. What makes this even trickier is that the damage doesn't always show up right away. In the moment, you might laugh along just to keep the peace. You might tell yourself it's not worth making a big deal out of, but later, maybe when you're alone, that comment lingers. It echoes. And the next time you want to open up, you hesitate. Because when love feels like a stage where you're always the punchline, it stops feeling safe. Respect means knowing where the line is and choosing not to cross it, even when it's easy. It's understanding that your partner's vulnerabilities are not entertainment. And if someone keeps making jokes that hurt you, the issue isn't your sensitivity. The issue is their inability or unwillingness to honor the parts of you that deserve kindness. In a relationship built on real respect, humor is never used to control, shame, or diminish. It's used to deepen the connection, not break it. And if you find yourself questioning whether the jokes will ever stop, the deeper question is this: can you truly feel safe and valued in a relationship where your pain is always the punchline? Fourth, they keep score. Relationships aren't a competition, but when your partner keeps track of every mistake you've ever made, it starts to feel like one. If every disagreement turns into a reminder of your past failures, that's not about resolving conflict, it's about control. And here's the truth: you cannot build a healthy, respectful relationship when one person is stockpiling evidence against the other. When someone keeps score, it's not about finding solutions, it's about holding power. It's a way of saying, you're always in the wrong, and I won't let you forget it. And the impact is real. You start to feel like no matter how much you apologize, no matter how much you try to grow, you'll always be the sum of your worst moments. That's not love. That's a ledger. And relationships are not meant to be transactional. And let's be clear, accountability matters. We're not perfect. We hurt the people we love even when we don't mean to. But there's a difference between working through an issue and weaponizing it. Respect means addressing what's wrong, allowing space for change, and then moving forward together. What it doesn't mean is dragging old mistakes into every new conversation just to win an argument. When scorekeeping becomes a pattern, it creates a culture of fear instead of trust. You start guarding your words and actions. not because you want to be a better partner, but because you're afraid of having your mistakes thrown back at you. And the more that fear takes hold, the harder it becomes to be vulnerable, to be honest, or to feel safe. A relationship built on respect makes room for forgiveness. It recognizes that people are more than their mistakes. And if your partner only sees where you've fallen short, how can you ever believe they truly see and value who you are? Fifth, they don't value your time. Time is one of the most honest forms of respect. When someone consistently shows up late, cancels plans without warning, or treats your time like it's flexible while expecting you to accommodate theirs, that's not just inconsiderate. It's a message. And the message is, my time matters more than yours. Here's the thing, life happens. Emergencies come up, schedules get messy, and nobody's perfect. But when it becomes a pattern, when you constantly feel like you're waiting, whether it's for a phone call, a plan to be honored, or simply to feel like a priority, it starts to wear you down. It's not just about the minutes or hours. It's about what that time represents, care, consideration, and mutual respect. What makes this so painful is that when someone doesn't value your time, it can start to feel personal. You begin to wonder, am I asking for too much? Do I even matter? And those questions don't stay small. They settle in. Because when someone consistently disregards your time, it's easy to feel like they're disregarding you. And it's not just the big moments. It's the little things. The times you rearrange your schedule to fit theirs, the plans you're excited about that fall through again, the conversations you hold off on because they're too busy. Over time, these small disappointments add up and they chip away at something essential, your sense of worth in the relationship. Respecting someone's time isn't just about punctuality. It's about recognizing that your partner's time is a reflection of their life. It's acknowledging that when they make time for you, they're offering a part of themselves. And when that offering is constantly disregarded, the deeper question becomes, how can you feel valued by someone who won't value the time you give? Sixth, they ignore your boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They're the lines that define where you end and another person begins. They're a way of saying, this is what I need to feel safe, respected, and whole. When your partner consistently crosses those lines, or worse, dismisses them altogether, it's a clear sign that your needs aren't being valued. And here's the truth. You can't have a healthy relationship without healthy boundaries. The tricky thing about boundaries is that they're often invisible. No one can see them unless we name them, and that takes courage. Because setting a boundary means being vulnerable enough to say, this matters to me. But what happens when you do that and your partner pushes past it? What happens when they roll their eyes, ignore your requests, or make you feel like you're unreasonable for having limits? Over time, that erodes trust. And without trust, intimacy can't survive. And I get it. Sometimes boundary violations are subtle. Maybe you've asked for space during an argument, but they keep pushing. Maybe you've said no to something that feels uncomfortable, but they pressure you until you give in. Or maybe it's as simple as asking them not to share private details, only to find out they've told other people anyway. These moments might seem small, but their impact isn't. Because when someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries, they're sending a message. Your needs aren't important here. Respect means honoring the lines you draw, not because they represent your emotional safety. And when someone loves you, they don't treat your boundaries like barriers to get around. They treat them as a guide, a way to love you better, not less. At the end of the day, a partner who respects you will listen when you say, this is what I need. And if someone constantly pushes past that, the question isn't whether your boundaries are too much. The question is why they don't believe you deserve to have them. Seventh, they don't celebrate your wins. When something good happens, whether it's a big promotion, a personal milestone, or just a moment you're proud of, you want the people closest to you to celebrate with you. It's human nature. We're wired for connection, and part of that connection is sharing joy. But when your partner downplays your successes, shifts the focus back to themselves, or meets your excitement with indifference, it doesn't just sting, it sends a clear message. Your happiness isn't a priority for me. And here's the thing, it's easy to recognize hurt when it's loud. Most people know when they're being criticized or belittled, but the absence of celebration, that's a quieter kind of pain. It's the silence after you share something meaningful. It's the way the conversation changes when you're proud of yourself. And over time, that silence can feel just as heavy as any insult. Because when the person who's supposed to be your biggest cheerleader isn't in your corner, it leaves you wondering, am I asking for too much? But let's be clear. Wanting to be celebrated isn't about needing constant validation. It's about wanting to feel seen. When someone truly respects you, they understand that your wins, big or small, are a part of who you are. They know that by celebrating those moments, they're not just clapping for your achievements, they're affirming your worth. And in a healthy relationship, that affirmation flows both ways. Both people should feel uplifted and supported, not like they're competing for attention or shrinking themselves to avoid resentment. When a partner refuses to celebrate your joy, it's often about their own insecurities. Maybe your success feels like a threat, or maybe they're too caught up in their own struggles to show up for you. But whatever the reason, the outcome is the same. You're left feeling unseen and unsupported. And the truth is, you deserve someone who claps when you win, who stands beside you in your brightest moments, not just the hard ones. Because love without celebration isn't love that honors your whole self. Eighth, they don't take responsibility for their actions. When something goes wrong in a relationship, it's easy to point fingers. Blame is a natural defense mechanism. It shields us from discomfort and allows us to avoid the harder work of looking inward. But here's the truth. Relationships are built on accountability. When your partner refuses to own their mistakes, dismisses your concerns, or constantly shifts the blame to you, it's not just frustrating, it's a sign of disrespect. Because without accountability, there can be no real trust. And it doesn't always show up in obvious ways. Sometimes it looks like minimizing the harm they caused. It wasn't that bad, or you're making a big deal out of nothing. Other times it's deflection, turning the conversation around to focus on what you did wrong instead. And the most painful part, when someone refuses to take responsibility, it leaves you carrying the emotional weight of their actions. You're left cleaning up the mess while they walk away without a second thought. Over time, this pattern can start to make you question yourself. You begin to wonder, am I being too sensitive? Am I the problem? But let me be clear, taking responsibility is not optional in a respectful relationship. It's not about perfection. We all mess up. We all have moments where we say or do things we regret. But the difference lies in what happens next. A partner who respects you will pause, listen, and acknowledge the hurt they've caused. Not because it's easy, but because they understand that your feelings deserve to be honored. When someone consistently refuses to take ownership, it sends a clear message. My comfort is more important than your pain. And you deserve better than that. You deserve a partner who is willing to stand in the discomfort of their mistakes and do the work to make things right. Because love without accountability isn't love that can grow. Ninth, they dismiss your feelings. When you open up about something that hurts, the response you get matters. If your partner brushes off your feelings, whether by telling you you're overreacting, being too sensitive, or making everything a big deal, it doesn't just invalidate your experience. It sends a deeper message. Your emotions don't matter here. And over time, that message can be incredibly damaging. Because when someone consistently dismisses how you feel, it's easy to start believing that your feelings are a problem. And here's the truth. Being human means having feelings. Real, messy, sometimes inconvenient feelings. That's not weakness, it's courage. It takes strength to say, this hurt me, or I need support. And when a partner refuses to engage with those emotions, it doesn't make them strong. It makes them unavailable. Emotional dismissal isn't about protecting the relationship. It's about protecting themselves from the discomfort of facing hard truths. What's tough is that this kind of dismissal often comes in subtle forms. Maybe it's the sigh when you bring up an issue, the eye roll when you express frustration, the way they change the subject when the conversation gets too deep. These responses may seem small, but their impact isn't, because every time your feelings are pushed aside, it reinforces the idea that your emotional reality is too much, too heavy, too complicated, too inconvenient, and eventually you stop sharing altogether, not because you don't feel things, but because you've learned that your feelings will be met with silence or judgment. A partner who respects you doesn't have to understand everything you feel, but they should care enough to listen. Respect says your emotions are valid because they're yours. And when someone consistently dismisses those feelings, the real question becomes, how can you feel safe in a relationship where your inner world is treated like an inconvenience? Respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship. It's not just about the grand gestures or the words someone says when things are easy. It's about how they treat you in the quiet, everyday moments. It's whether they value your feelings, honor your boundaries, and show up for you with kindness and consistency. Because at the end of the day, love without respect isn't really love. It's something else dressed up to look like it. And here's what I know for sure. You deserve to be in a relationship where you feel seen, heard, and valued, where your voice matters, where your wins are celebrated, your pain is acknowledged, and your boundaries are honored. Anything less isn't love that nurtures, it's love that drains. And if you recognize these signs in your relationship, it's not about blame or shame, it's about clarity. Because once you see things clearly, you can make choices that align with your worth. You are worthy of a relationship built on mutual respect, one where your time, feelings, and whole self are honored. Don't settle for anything less. Good luck. You've got this.